No justice!
No peace!
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 Red, yellow, black, brown, and white people in all 50 states of this country are marching together, protesting the systematic, violent racism being done to persons of black and brown skin. A violence that is institutional and perpetual. Violence is not the only type of racism. Violence comes in many forms. Individual racism, institutional racism, and cultural racism. But no matter the form, racism is injustice. It is injustice that should not be a part of this world, this nation, and especially the Church of Jesus. I'm Reverend David Harvey Blanchett Sr., a canonical resident of the Diocese of Hawaii. Canonical resident means I answer to the Episcopal Bishop of Hawaii. Recently, I saw a sign in a diocesan email that read, "Your silence gives consent. Speak out against racism." As I sat there, staring at my computer, I asked myself, why am I silent? Why am I silent when I taught my children to confront racism and to speak out? That even if it doesn't go well for them, there is a chance those who follow will have it better. Blanchetts should always sensitize perpetrators by speaking out. That's the better way, the moral way. That is the Jesus way. George Floyd was sentenced to death by racism. My offsprings are now protesting with fellow Americans of all walks of life and shades of color, racial injustice in the states they reside: Alaska, Louisiana, and Hawaii. But now, because I look at that June 8th diocesan email with the subject heading, "The Bishop's Monday Video Message," I saw the photo, "Your silence gives consent. Speak out against racism." I feel compelled to apologize to my children for the delay and speak out about an uncomfortable evil. Is there racial injustice in the Episcopal Church in Hawaii? From my perspective as a black priest, there is. To be more specific, there is towards black priests in Hawaii. Now, what is racism? What is the definition? Racism is race prejudice plus misuse of power. Race prejudice plus misuse of power. In racism, you have the racist person who commits the racist act. In racism, you have the gatekeepers, and a gatekeeper is a person who knows injustice was initiated but says or does nothing about it. Gatekeepers close their eyes to the event or the events. They pretend it didn't happen. They make excuses for the perpetrator. They tell the victim they are sorry it happened and that it shouldn't have happened to the victim, but afterwards does or says nothing because they don't want to make waves. Gatekeepers are the many who perpetuate the injustice by allowing it to continue. In racism, you have resistance fighter. You have the resistance fighter. Resistance fighters speak up when spotting when experiencing or spotting abuse, racial disrespect, or racial injustice. Resistance fighters seek a change in the behavior of a racist person and institution. In the past, when I spoke up, white clergy would tell me I misunderstood. I'm too sensitive. Or it sounds like to me that you're being racist. Let it be clear. When you respond to an act of racism, you are a resistance fighter and not a racist. Racist, gatekeeper, resistance fighter. Which are you? I want you to keep these three profiles in mind as I tell you about my journey, my perspective in injustice inflicted. My journey begins with my arrival to Hawaii as a part-time resident. 2011, I arrived from Anchorage, Alaska. And soon afterwards, I offered to coordinate an ecumenical community Martin Luther King Jr. Day service on the holiday, since no other church or denomination in the state was doing so. I had solely done this in Alaska for 6 years. 3 churches asked me to hold it in their facilities in Hawaii, and I chose St. Elizabeth because I knew the priest from St. John by the Sea, or when he was at St. John's by the Sea. The service was to be Anglican in format, complete with communion. The only difference, clergy from many different denominations would actively participate. We advertised, got all the participants. I think it's about 20 different clergy to be a part of it. And we have choirs. All these people, participants and choirs, were committed. And upon informing the high-up clergy person in the diocesan offices of the progress, I was informed I could not do the service because it included aspects of the Anglican Kenyan Book of Common Prayer. After I told the priest at St. Elizabeth, that priest called the high-up clergy in the diocesan office. And you know what? The liturgy all of a sudden got approved. Now, the event was a huge success and we packed the place. But still, I wondered why the white priest could get permission when the black priest was told no way. Not long after this incident, I was doing GBD, that's gospel-based discipleship service in my free time. Not in a primary service, but again, I was told by a high-up diocesan clergy I was forbidden to use this Episcopal church created program in Hawaii. However, when I visited St. Mary's Episcopal Church soon afterwards, the priest there was using GBD. He said that he used it regularly and that it was a great tool. He uses GBD, but I am not allowed. He's white, I'm black. Is there some connection here? Wow. I was assigned to Calvary Episcopal Church in Kaneohe. And near the end, I was asked, did the church have any new people? I said, beside my 3 family, I believe there were 4. And the high-up clergy in the diocesan office stated, "You're lying. I looked at the numbers on the book, and they haven't changed since you've been there. I never checked the attendance book. The laity just did that. So I could not respond. Still, how could the high up priest respond so forcefully, so disrespectfully, unless that person thought white privilege gave them that right? There were 4 of us clergy working in the Kaneohe area as a team. And at the conclusion of our term, there was to be a reassignment by the high-up clergy in the diocesan office. All were reassigned except me. I was told, and this is the exact quote, "You would be good in a holly church, but I don't have any here." You would be good in a holly church, but I don't have any here. What? This higher up clergy is saying, I am good, but I don't fit in the Episcopal Church. This person representing the church is saying, this church, this Episcopal Church, has no use for me. It made me think back to a clergy at St. Clemens telling me that they put my name in for a diocesan committee position, and the diocesan office was not happy about it. A lot of times you think stuff is, you wonder what's happening, but then you start putting the dots together and you say, something's going on. In Alaska, between 2004 and 2011, I was a bishop's staff officer holding the positions of 2020 coordinator, safe church officer, diocesan preparedness coordinator, and communications officer. Yet, in Hawaii, I am suddenly worthless as far as the high-up clergy in the diocesan office is concerned. After no appointment for a year, I felt forced to retire so I'd not lose my retirement moving allowance. And after that, I did a lot of supply work. I decided to call myself a PIP. Capital P, capital I, capital P. That stands for Priest in the Pew. My goal was to assist laity when I'm asked with the job they volunteered or were volunteered to do. I visited many churches as a PIP, sitting in the pews. And eventually, Good Samaritan asked me if I would do a preschool church service on an ongoing basis and also give communion to elders in the old folks' home at Paloha. Good Samaritan had been without a priest or a deacon for some time. And it wasn't long after I was helping delivering Thanksgiving baskets and assisting with their newsletter and doing confirmation. All ministries I did gladly without any pay. I was happy to assist where needed. And then it happened. I was told by the high-up clergy not to help Good Samaritan Episcopal Church in a fire-spitting letter. I was to stop my confirmation teaching and immediately turn the class over to the priest at Epiphany Church. I was told to cease all work with that church, with Good Samaritan, and not to attend the Vestry meetings. The thing is, I never attended a vestry meeting, not once, ever, at Good Samaritan. Of all the churches I visited during those periods of subbing, I never attended a vestry meeting, not one. I pushed back with that upper clergy in the diocesan office hard, with a fire letter myself. And I reminded the upper clergy that those he and I reminded the upper clergy and those he CC'd that I am a priest in good standing, and I will continue to serve in the manner of my ordination and assist laity whenever asked. Of course, after the letter from the high-up clergy, people at Good Samaritan are now spooked. And I had to stop attending there so that they could be at ease. But on a side note, it would have been profitable to me, to Good Samaritan, and to the diocese as a whole, if Good Samaritan, as a witness to what we now call a Trump-like ambush attack, to challenge the validity of the unjust attack and not be a gatekeeper. I left Good Samaritan. I really like Good Samaritan. And I left Good Samaritan to be a PIP, member, a priest in the pew, at St. Mary's. Some at Good Samaritan, they asked me why the diocesan office was doing this. And my firm reply to them was racism. That moment of that letter, I thought about all the other things that happened, and it rang like a bell. Racism against a black priest. I thought about other black priests who were from Hawaii said, and it came very clear to me. Racism. During my time with the Hawaiian Episcopal Diocese, I believe I experienced things happening to me in a way that would not happen if I were white. Sometimes I just feel so uneasy. I was at a Bible study once where a white clergy says black men marry white women only because they want a trophy wife. Another time, I'm listening to a Sunday morning service during which the clergy very slowly and dramatically says, "Eeny, meeny, mighty, mo." And I notice eyes of some of the congregation turning around and looking at me. Oh no, he's not going to say it, is he? The N-word. The clergy person did not finish with the catch ya in by his toes word, but still I felt violated. It was offensive. And when I mentioned it to the clergy after the service, the person blew my concerns off, mentioning that there were many versions of this saying, and how can you tell who gets offended to what? Everyone has something they are offensive to. What is he to do? I got the feeling that he knew all the versions that are offensive to people of color. St. Mary's Episcopal Church had a guest house in the back of the property, in which there were 3 bedrooms. I stayed there a lot, and I always paid for my stay. I long-term rented the middle bedroom. I fixed it up with extra furniture and a privacy screen. You know those Chinese privacy screens? Not once, but 3 different times, a clergy person in charge asked me to vacate my room and move to another vacant room, so a white guest could have a nicer room. I turned my back the first time and just walked away. The other rooms were bigger, but mine, for some reason, would impress the white guests, the people brought in for the book club. I never moved. But the third time I was asked, I was so angry inside, I moved out 2 days later after the guests arrived and settled in an empty room. I temporarily left the state. I temporarily left the state for a few months without telling anyone but the parish administrator. Why am I telling my story? I tell it because I desire that this diocese be a non-racist diocese. Not just for white, yellow, and brown folks, but for red and black also. I want this diocese to live the understanding that no one should be cast aside, belittled, or ridiculed. I want this diocese to live the fact that God can use any willing person for his glory. And most importantly, I want this diocese to know that if you witness racism and do nothing, you are a gatekeeper. You, as a gatekeeper, are racist also if you're white, and a fool if you're not white. Jesus desires us to live in harmony, with respect, with love, forgiveness, and restoration. Jesus desires us to go in peace. Racism destroys peace of the world. Racism, racial prejudice plus misuse of power equals racism. A racist, gatekeeper, or resistance fighter? How does Jesus see you? In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
No justice!
No peace!